The following is a presentation of iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
Good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to those of you watching on iRacing Live, YouTube, and Facebook. Welcome to LSRTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking. I am James Pike, joined tonight in the booth by my colleague Brian Macklin, and down in the production truck by our lovely and talented Cisco Scaramuza. And tonight we come to you from Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn, Michigan. Brian, if there's one place to describe this track, this beast, I keep thinking of Eleanor Roosevelt's famous quote about bad speed. I suppose if we're going to edit it a little bit, but this place is just unbelievably quick. That's the first thing you think of when we get here.
Yeah, absolutely. These drivers are going to be heading off into turn 1 and into turn 3 at well over 210 miles an hour all night long. You're going to see those speeds, and they have to be able to get the car load up to about 175, 180 to make the corner and be able to keep grip under the car so that you can actually get off the corner and get down these long straightaways. It's going to be a very exciting and action-packed race, and the old surface, because we don't have the updated surface yet here on iRacing, it's going to give these guys another challenge because the tires are going to wear out tremendously over a longer green flag run, and these guys are really going to have to battle that throughout the entire race. As these tires fade, they're going to lose a lot of grip, they're going to start slipping and sliding on corner exit, and it's going to get very exciting.
Meanwhile, as we work our way through this 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series season, we've already run 14 races. We're down to 11 races until the playoffs begin in September. And as we take a look at this playoff grid, we already have 8 drivers with victories. David Washington leads the points, leads the field in terms of victories. Eberhardt's pretty close to him. David Comstock has put a really, really solid year down. And then you've got a whole bunch of Aegis drivers in there too. Dylan Jones, Trevor Rapallo, Joseph Tice, Andrew Ferry-Niars, and Bruce Ackerman, all with some sort of relation to the Aegis camp. So very, very strong showing for them so far, and figure we'll probably see more of them when we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, you got the drivers that are trying to make their way in, like Nelson Rivera, Lionel Calisto, Shane Ewing. These are drivers right now that are either on the cutoff like Nelson Rivera is, or are just outside of the cutoff that are just trying to find a way to make up some points to try to get into the playoffs and give themselves an opportunity to race for that championship. As you mentioned, James, we have 11 races left to go, and they're running out of time. If you're going to win a race, you've got to make or find a way to make it happen now. You don't want to wait until we get to Bristol and Richmond at the end of this thing to decide you're going to try to win one of those races. You need to try to get that win as soon as possible so you can just secure yourself a spot and then focus on the championship.
See how that plays out and more, but for the moment, we'll go ahead and look at tonight's starting grid, which begins with one of the aforementioned Aegis drivers. Trevor Rapallo wins the pole for tonight's race at Michigan. He'll be followed by teammate David Washington, who starts on the outside of the front row. Then A.J. Browning and Anthony DeBarro, who will start 3rd and 4th. Brandon Bowie will begin tonight from the 5th position. Then Shane Ewing starts 6th. Mike Kelly will roll off from 7th. Thomas Lattimore begins from 8th. Dwayne Vincent in that Parker Store Chevrolet begins from 9th, and then Carl Shedd rounds out your top 10.
Daniel Eberhardt will start in the 11th position here tonight. Then he's followed by Joseph Tice in 12th. Nelson Rivera, he's holding that playoff cutoff spot right now. He starts 13th here tonight. Then we have Braden Whittaker starting 14th. Austin Coop is 15th. David Comstock will start 16th. Then we have Dylan Jones, Andrew Freenars, Nathan Little, and Sean Casto, your top 20.
Sean Bounty will begin tonight from the 21st position. Nick Silver starts from 22nd. 23rd is where you'll find the 8 machine of Randy Yoakum. Scott Walter will start from 24th. Gabe Wood will begin tonight's race from 25th. Corey Wolf starts from the 26th position. Last driver to take time is Doug Roth in the 43 machine. He'll start 27th. And then it's Lionel Callisto starting 8th. Kyle Barnes will begin from 29th. Gio Bramante rounds out your top 30. And then it's Bruce Ackerman and Doug Wyatt to round out your field for tonight's race at Michigan. And as we take a closer look at this Michigan Speedway, we're about an hour to the west of Detroit. Big old urban area famous for Motown and fast cars and home to most, if not all, of the main bases of power for your American manufacturers, your Fords, your General Motors, your Chryslers, that sort of thing. But here in Brooklyn in the Irish Hills, we have a track that is 2 miles long, and we will race here for 100 laps. So 200 miles is the distance we'll cover tonight. 18 degrees of banking in the turns, 12 degrees on that D-shaped front straightaway, and then 5 degrees on the back straightaway to help you get around this Michigan International Speedway. But it just feels like you're on a gigantic level the whole time, or a seesaw or something, where you're trying to balance speed and downforce, and you feel like you want to just punish this place and run it the same way you would a Daytona or Talladega, but you can't because you just don't quite have the banking and the downforce you need to go all out all the way around this place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a challenge for these drivers because, like you mentioned, you want to go into the corner and just stay in the throttle as long as possible. But the problem with that is, especially since we're on the older Michigan surface, if you do that, you're going to wear out that right front tire. And after 5, 10, 15 laps, if we have a couple of long green flag runs, you're not going to have a right front tire left to lean on, and you're going to start slipping towards the back and lose a lot of track position, which that is a key here at this track. More than most tracks, I think Pocono and Indianapolis are probably the only other 2 tracks on the circuit where track position is more important, but you've got to have track position here at Michigan in order to put yourself in a position to try to win the race.
Oh, we talk about that whole managing tires thing too a lot as well. It definitely applies here, especially with the old pavement. So, in the meantime, glad to have you watching on LSRTV for the 15th round of the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series season, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking. Pace car pulls away. Rapallo leads the field to green, and we are underway from Michigan. And he gets a decent start, but so does David Washington on the outside. Meanwhile, one car to the inside already tries to go down to the apron. That's Brandon Bowie, who thought about going underneath A.J. Browning, but decided not to take that line. So it's Rapallo, and then Washington, and then DeBarro, who have all cleared out. It's Browning, and it's Shane Ewing running side by side down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and you see that Ewing gets the big run off of turn 2. He was able to clear A.J. Browning and take control of that 4th position, and now they head off into turn 3, and they are still trying to just get up to speed and get a feel for the tires and a feel for the grip that they have in the racetrack right now. But we have a battle for second now as DeBarro goes to the bottom of the racetrack. He's going to try to take that position away from David Washington, but Washington was able to carry enough speed off of turn 4 to hold on to that position, and now they work down into turn 1 once again, and you can see that Washington and DeBarro, they're already starting to close back in on Rapallo here as they have closed that gap down to about 2 car lengths down the backstretch.
We'll make note of this very quickly because you'll see it all night. This is a place where running the middle to high line is usually the fastest way around. That's not necessarily the case at all the tracks we visit on the service, but this one in particular, if you can get a good run off that top side, especially coming off of the straightaways, that's where you're going to be able to make up spots and get alongside people. Meanwhile, looking here up front, Rapallo's gap is now down to maybe half a bumper length, if that. David Washington is right on his rear bumper. So is DeBarro, and then you've got a little bit of a gap back to Shane Ewing. It's already 7/10 of a second, and then Brandon Bowie's a full second behind already. So a little bit of a gap for me, but Washington now stalking his teammate, looking for the race lead. He'll go underneath Rapallo as they go into turn 3.
And he is going to clear Trevor Rapallo and take the race lead as they come to complete lap 3 and begin lap 4. And here comes Anthony DeBarro looking to try to take that position away as well. He got a great run off turn 4. He goes to the bottom of the racetrack, but the teammates up in front of them are drafting. Look at that. They're doing what we saw last week at Daytona. And now Rapallo gets kicked sideways going into the corner. I think there was contact between him and DeBarro, and that kicks him sideways. He falls back to 3rd. He's way off the pace now as he's trying to get back up to speed. And here comes Shane Ewing looking to try to take that position away. I believe going into a corner, DeBarro made contact with the number 9 of Trevor Rapallo, and that's what kicked him sideways. And indeed, that's exactly what it is. It looks like, James, he just overdrove that corner just a little bit, got into him, kicked him sideways. But fortunately for Rapallo, he was able to hang on to it. He did lose a little bit of track position, but it could have been a lot worse than it was.
could have been way, way worse than it was. I also see one car trying to go off and around on the grass in the back on the front straightaway, way in the back of the field. Don't know if that's going to be of note here in just a little bit. But what matters right now is that Washington is up in front of this field, and now it's Navarro, who has maybe 4 or 5 car lengths to the rear bumper of that number 98, but he's got room and got time to make things happen. And I think most importantly, he doesn't have to worry about finding the teammates, because we saw what Rapallo and Washington were trying to do. They were trying to draft and make sure that Navarro couldn't get the run on either one of them. But now that it's just Washington up there, it's going to be a sheer pace versus pace battle, and the fastest man should have control of this race within the next 5 to 10 laps.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they were drafting like that before the contact happened, it was working because Navarro was able to get to the inside of Trevor Rapallo, but Trevor hooked onto the back bumper of his teammate David Washington, and when they did that, they picked up enough speed where they were able to clear Navarro and get ahead of him, and that's when he got in line behind Trevor and unfortunately just made a little bit of contact with him and kicked him around. But that could have been a lot bigger again than it was. I was about to touch on a little fact about Trevor Rapallo's season. Those laps that he led at the beginning of this race were his first laps led since Auto Club all the way back on March 27th. He has not led a single lap since then, so it's not really, I think it's a bit of a coincidence, maybe not, that he was able to lead laps at Auto Club, which is a 2-mile racetrack, and then we come here to another 2-mile racetrack, and he was able to get the pole and lead a few laps as well. So something about the bigger tracks that seems to work out nicely for him.
And most importantly, not just 2-mile racetracks, but the 2 sister tracks that are the same shape. The only difference between here and Auto Club is that the Californian track is a little bit wider. It has less banking, but they are the same exact shape. So no surprise that Rapallo's got a package that works well at these sorts of facilities. But in the meantime, Washington is out front to the tune of half a second, and that lead is increasing. And your best battle is actually back here around 7th, 8th, and 9th, where you've got Daniel Eberhardt, AJ Browning, and Dwayne Vincent in the 7-Up machine, trying to make things happen as they go into turn 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eberhardt right now is on the bottom of the racetrack trying to take that position away from A.J. Browning. That's a battle for the 8th position right now, 7th and 8th position. And it looks like Eberhardt's going to get it as A.J. Browning got a little loose off the corner, had to check up. That opens the door now for Dwayne Vincent in that 7-Up machine to take that position. And indeed, he will do so. He clears A.J. Browning. So A.J.'s going to go from 7th to 9th in just about a half a straightaway. Unfortunate there, but he's able to get in line behind these guys. He's now trying to fend off Mike Kelly, who's not quite close enough to really do anything with him, but he is starting to close up on him. And we have another battle right ahead of these guys as it looks like Brandon Bowie and Shane Ewing are going at it for the 5th position. Actually, I believe Ewing might have just had a little bit of an issue because he was running 3rd, and he just all of a sudden dropped back behind Trevor Rapallo and Brandon Bowie. So he's starting to slip back now that this race is starting to stretch out a little bit.
I think he just got kind of caught up on the high side of the corner and didn't get a good run. Sometimes you can make the high line work out of 1 and 2, but it almost feels like you're kind of sliding off the edge towards the outside wall when you tackle that turn at pace. And if you don't run it right, you won't get a good run out of the corner. And I'm 90% certain that's exactly what happened to Ewing. He didn't get a good run off of turn 2, and Rapallo and Bowie both did, and that's how they were able to clear the 32, knock him back to 5th, and how Rapallo was able to climb back up to 3rd. Bowie to come up to 4th, so he's +1 from where he started. That might be the highest he's run in this race so far, though we are, of course, very early on. That is still your best battle pack, though. The gap is holding at about 0.6 of a second between Washington and Navarro, and then it's another second-ish back to this little pack of Rapallo and Bowie and Ewing and company. So we'll keep our eyes on this because I think most of the action, most of the racing should be happening right here over the course of the next few laps.
Yeah, I have to believe that you're absolutely right about that. This is going to be a very exciting battle as these guys stretch out. We start to see the tires begin to fade. And I was just looking at some of the lap times, and these guys qualified, James, at a 37.4 for the pole. Well, just 10 laps into this run, we're already down to 38.5. So they, after just 12 laps, they have cut off a full second on their lap times. That's how much these tires mean and how quickly they fall off here at Michigan. And the longer this run gets, the more you're going to see that. If they get a full green flag run where they have to actually pit for fuel and tires, these tires may fall off as much as 3 to 4 seconds by the time they actually come to pit road. So managing your tires now and being able to keep them under you for the whole run, that's going to be critically important to maintaining that track position and putting yourself in the best possible position as we get to the end of the race.
Meanwhile, another battle here. This for, I believe, to be the third position. You've got Bowie and Rapallo and Ewing still right there with one another, but Ewing is able to clear Rapallo, so that'll be actually the fourth position that he takes back from the 9 car. But will Rapallo get a good run off of the corner? Not quite. Tried to find a way around, but didn't quite make it happen. Meanwhile, behind those two, Daniel Eberhardt has gotten underneath the 45 of Carl Shedd, as has Dwayne Vincent. So up into, I believe, the 6th position will go Eberhardt. 7th should be Vincent if he can clear Shedd. Not quite, though. He tried to slide that rear bumper in the number 13 machine up in front of Shedd. Couldn't quite do it there on the straightaway, though, but he's got the position. So Eberhardt to 6th, Vincent to 7th, Shedd back to 8th in turn 1.
Man, there was almost a moment just a little bit behind this battle that you were referring to, James, and it was between David Comstock in the 42 and Braden Whittaker in the 04. Coming off turn 4, Whittaker got extremely sideways. He almost made contact with David Comstock. Now he almost gets into the wall off turn 2. That's going to check him up and allow a couple of these drivers to get by him. David Comstock was able to move ahead. He'll move into the 14th position. And we have a wreck right here. Braden Whittaker is around in 3, our first caution of the night. Braden Whittaker gets kicked sideways. I believe he got hit in the left rear. I'm trying to see what number that was. The 47 machine of Andrew Freenard made contact with him in the middle of 3 and 4. That sent Braden Whittaker around. He made heavy contact with the turn 4 wall, and then a few more drivers piled in to get some pretty significant damage as well. I see the 28 machine of Scott Walker has some damage, and a few others as well. So a big wreck here on lap number, I believe that was 15 right there.
Scott Walker and Giovanni Brombanzi, the two other ones that I can tell from our replays that Whittaker's already disconnected. Douglas Wyatt out as well. So Whittaker just knew immediately he was done. And interesting that you were sitting right on that, Macklin, as Whittaker was having issues. So I almost wonder if something happened earlier in that lap that threw off the handling on Whittaker's car, and that might explain why he had trouble getting through turn 3 and ultimately why he crashed and why he's out of this race.
Well, he was having a pretty heavy battle with David Comstock about a lap before that, and he got very sideways coming off of turn 4 and almost wrecked it right there. And you have to wonder if maybe that didn't heat the right rear tire up and get that thing loose, and what ultimately led to him going around. But we have pit stops getting ready to start here for the first time tonight. David Washington will bring everybody to pit road. He's got Anthony DeBarro right behind him, and everybody comes to their pit boxes. And it looks like so far everybody up in the top 5 got into their boxes cleanly. It looks like maybe Trevor Rapallo went a little bit too far into his box, and now I'm looking at Anthony DeBarro. He too had to back up, so a couple of issues for some of these guys. But nobody's going to get 2 tires. It's going to be 4 tires all the way down pit road, and it looks like David Washington will easily win that battle off of pit road.
DeBarro will be the one that ends up paying dearly for this because he had to, I think, go in reverse about 2 or 3 times just to get himself back into his box. So he really messed up his entry into his pit box there under this round of cautions, and now that's a lot of track position, especially with this race being so early in the going. That could be 10-15 spots by the time it's all done. Also, maybe a penalty for the 44 Brandon Bowie, because I see him dropping towards the back of the field, so wonder if the 44 might have been nabbed by the speeding police potentially. So bad luck for some of these drivers up at the front of the field who were there for the first handful of laps, and now it'll be upon them to try and find a way through and get back towards the front of this field before the end of the race. We'll take a moment, though, while we're under yellow, to remind you that coverage of the Full Throttle Cup Series tonight is brought to you by Hippie's Paint Shop. Hippie's Paint Shop has over 5 years of experience providing top-quality custom paint schemes for all iRacing vehicles at a low price. Because after all, at Hippie's Paint Shop, the cost isn't high, just the painter. So, paint schemes galore, as always, here in the Full Throttle Cup Series. A lot of fun to see the Hippies folks put all their works out on display for all of us here to see at LSRTV.
They do an amazing job with all of their paint schemes. But I want to go back to the DeBarro and Trevor Apollo issue on pit road. It is so easy to slide through your box on a track like this where you're not using a lot of brake. You don't keep a lot of heat in the brakes. And so when you have to come to pit road and all of a sudden apply the brakes and come to a complete stop, if you don't have any heat in those brakes, it's very hard to get the car to actually come to a complete stop when you start sliding into your pit box. It's one of those things you see some drivers that they'll actually go ahead and just kind of heat up the brakes under caution before they come to pit road. They'll just tap the brake a little bit, try to get a little bit of heat applied to the brakes, so when they come to pit road, they don't have that issue. And you have to wonder if maybe that's what we saw with Anthony DeBarro and with Trevor Apollo. Maybe they just didn't get enough heat in the brakes, and it just wasn't able to get stopped when they came to pit road.
Meanwhile, two other points of note here before we get the restart on lap 18. Kyle Barnes stayed out in the number 15 machine, so he will actually be the leader as we come back to green. And meanwhile, towards the back of the field, Farinars claimed that last yellow with Whitaker and got the subsequent end of line penalty. So he will have to find his way back up towards the front of the field as this race progresses. But we'll get our restart here as soon as the Ford Mustang pace car pulls down onto pit road, and it goes, and off should go Kyle Barnes, who actually got a pretty solid restart for the lack of grip that he should in theory have on 15-lap-old tires. But Barnes out in front. Casto now looking underneath David Washington, 52 car up at the front of the field for the first time all night. But man, did David Washington get a run on the outside. Oh, Barnes gets turned. Huge crash. Cars scattering everywhere across the back straightaway. Caution flag comes out again. And we've talked at points about how old tires can change the complexion of a race, and maybe no more so than it did right there, because Barnes just turned in front of everyone as they were coming up to speed down the back straightaway. I couldn't tell you how many drivers were involved in that.
Man, that was absolutely huge. And that was the tire difference. Like you mentioned, James, they just went off into turn one, and Kyle did not have the grip that he needed. He was not able to keep the speed up that we saw Sean Casto, David Washington have. And how about David Washington? I don't think you could have fit a piece of paper between him and Kyle Barnes as Kyle was getting turned into the wall. Absolutely incredible how he was able to escape that. But unfortunately, Daniel Eberhardt, he took a really hard hit as he ended up flipping down the back straightaway. Once this happened, he just had nowhere to go. He was just kind of along for the ride, got hit and just got sent up and over and slid across his roof for a little while. But I'd be interested to see the onboard of the number 42 machine, because somehow David Comstock made it through that thing. He almost came to a complete stop on the backstretch, and he just watched it all happen. That'd be a really cool onboard if we can get that on the LSRTV replay screen.
Just trying to go back and rewatch this. Casto, I think, was racing so close to Barnes that he couldn't really check up. I mean, they were bumper to bumper, so there's almost no room to react. And Barnes definitely got loose a little bit, but I don't really know if there's much Casto could have done in that situation, because that's a freak of nature reaction time that would be required in order to check up and avoid Barnes. And even then, if you do that, then you put yourself at risk of getting run over by someone from behind you. So I think amazingly, the only cars that really got major damage in that were Barnes, DeBarro, and Eberhardt, from what I can tell. I think there were a few more with minor damage that might require some trips down pit road, but as it stands, I think it's just those three that are really going to be done for the night after this wreck, and that is amazing after how violent that wreck was.
And you have to feel bad for Trevor Apollo and Anthony DeBarro, because these are two drivers that slid through their boxes on pit road and lost a significant amount of track position, which is what put them back behind this wreck and put them in a spot where, unfortunately, they just had nowhere to go, and they got collected in it. And for DeBarro, I don't think that his damage has anything to do with that wreck, because he made it through cleanly. He had damage on the front of that car from something else, from what I can see here. Because it looks like he made it through that wreck fairly cleanly. So not really sure what happened there. I'll have to try to go back and look and see if I can find out where that damage came from, but it did not come from that wreck.
Maybe sliding through the box on pit road, I couldn't quite tell, but there was just a lot that happened within that incident there. So we'll try and get everybody gathered back up here and see if we can get this back going again under green. Washington will lead once we get back to it, and then Casto will be second. Wonder how timing and scoring is going to shake that out, though, and how our admins are going to see that wreck because Castro might be at risk line penalty here, depending on how they view it. So that might not stand. And now he comes down pit road, so I guess it definitely won't stand. So now we'll go ahead and move up through the field a little bit. Finds the 13 car. Dwayne Vincent should be the one restarting second when we get back to it. Then Mike Kelly, Trevor Apollo, and still looking for more drivers here. It's just all really tough to sort out. Might be Gabe Wood that ends up in the 5th spot here.
And how about for Gabe Wood? He started 25th in this race, and if it all sorts out the way we think it will, he's going to be above and beyond our biggest mover of the race, climbing up inside the top 5 after just a handful of laps, just 21 laps to get up to that point of the race. And I did go back and find what happened to Anthony DeBarro on the restart as they were trying to get up to speed. There was a bit of a checkup in front of him, and he had nowhere to go and ran into the back of the car in front of him as they were trying to get up to speed, and unfortunately suffered some pretty significant damage to that car. And it was Nick Silver in front of him that he ran into the back of and got some pretty heavy damage there.
So that explains what happened to DeBarro, and should effectively take him out of contention for the win. It's hard to run at a track like this when you've got a car that's that mangled up on the front end, as aerodynamically sensitive as this track is when you go as fast as you do. We'll take a moment here under yellow to remind you that coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle's Cup Series is also brought to you by our friends at Joel Real Timing, the official timing software of LSRTV. Whether you spend your time on the sim behind the wheel, on the pit box, or from the spotter's stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. You can get yourself a basic download for free, or you can get the pro version today by visiting joel-real-timing.com. Castro has claimed responsibility for that last incident with Kyle Barnes, so he will get the end-of-line penalty and head to the back of the field for those of you that were wondering. And now, as we look at this field, as lights come off on the pace car, we finally do have things sorted out, and it will be David Washington to lead us back to the green as we begin lap 23. Then Dwayne Vincent, Mike Kelly, Carl Shed, Trevor Rapallo, your top 5, Gabe Wood, Austin Coop running really well, up 8 spots since the restart. He'll restart 7th. Then it'll be Joseph Tice, David Comstock, and Dylan Jones to bring us back to green. That'll be your top 10 when we come back across the stripe.
It's going to be a very exciting restart, and these drivers, you have to believe, are going to be on edge on this next restart after what just happened at the front of the field. Granted, we don't have that car on older tires like we did on the most recent restart, but it still puts it in the back of your head. You just had one restart that went horribly wrong, and we saw a pretty big wreck on the backstretch as a result of that. These drivers are going to be very careful. I imagine you're going to see them trying to get a little bit more spread out and trying to give each other just a hair more room than what we saw in that last restart.
You would think, but what tends to be logical isn't necessarily what always happens here on the sim. So we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. Pace car goes back down pit road, though, and Washington immediately jumped away. Wasted no time getting back to it and just dumped everybody. About 4 or 5 car lengths now, maybe even 6 or 7 or 8 between the 98 machine and the rest of the field as they come through the turn. Kelly was able to get going a little bit better than Vincent did, so Mike Kelly gets around Dwayne Vincent for second. Vincent will try to pull the crossover though as they come down the back straightaway. Won't have the momentum to do it, but Carl Shed will have the momentum to get underneath Vincent. So now it's Carl Shed underneath Vincent for third. And now he'll go see if he can come after Kelly. Meanwhile, still side by side in the back, you've got Tyson Coop racing alongside each other. That's for 7th. And then they're 2 by 2 by 2 for the next 6 cars back. That's a fun little battle pack right there.
Man, is it ever. You got Austin Coop trying to hold off a couple of these drivers as they head off into turn 1. You see he's trying to defend from Dylan Jones and David Comstock on the bottom as Comstock slips up and almost makes contact with Jones in the middle of the corner. Manages to keep it off of him, but that hurt his momentum, and now you see Jones trying to carry that speed down the back straightaway, but he's not going to be able to clear Comstock, so that's going to keep them side by side as they head into 1. Meanwhile, right in front of them, there's still a great battle going on between Gabe Wood and Joseph Tice, as Tice is trying to fend off Gabe Wood on the inside line. and you can see that momentum on the outside carries you down the straightaway, but as these drivers cut to the bottom of the racetrack, the draft goes down there, and unfortunately for Tice, he just didn't have it, and that allowed Gabe Wood to stay at his door as they went to turns 1 and 2, and now Gabe is trying to fight, but that bottom of the racetrack, James, it's so hard to make anything happen because the banking just isn't there and the grip isn't there for these drivers.
Isn't really there at all, no matter what stage of the run your tires are in. By the way, if you're wondering about David Washington, he's gone out in front of this field by more than a second now as they come back across the stripe. So you've got Shed, who's finally been able to break free of the rest of these drivers, and he's off the front of Kelly by about 2 or 3 car lengths, and then Kelly might have 1 or 2 back to Vincent, and then it's all on from there. You've got Tyson there, Rapallo's there, Coop is there, Gabe Wood is there. Comstock has been trying to fight his way through the field and get a spot. Now he'll get around Wood, who got trapped on the inside and did not get a good run at all. So Wood's going to lose a few spots here. First to Dylan Jones, then to A.J. Browning, and might be able to slide up. No, he won't even be able to slide up in front of Shane Ewing and Lionel Callisto, who's going to try maybe take it 3 wide as they come out of turn 4. How about it? How about it? They'll go 3 wide, Ewing to the bottom, then you've got Wood on the middle lane, and then you've got Callisto on the outside. Bramanti right there ready to pounce if anything happens, and everybody ahead of them has actually managed to sort it out single file for the most part. So maybe they are finally settling down, Mr. Macklin. Who knows?
And it certainly looks like as this race progresses, especially after we had that one big wreck, that these guys just decided they have plenty of laps left. We still have 73 laps to go when they get to the stripe. There's really no point in tearing up that many race cars this early on, and I think that's what we're seeing these drivers do. But I'm very intrigued by how well Trevor Rapallo and Austin Cooper doing up inside the top 10. Trevor Rapallo, other than a couple of decent runs at the plate tracks, and he did run well at Auto Club, he has not had the season that we expected him to have after having that hot start and winning at Daytona. And he stayed up inside the top 10 after getting the pole. Looks like he's got a pretty fast car, but now he's trying to battle with Comstock, who got right on the left rear of Trevor coming off of turn 2. Wasn't able to get to his inside and stay there, but he is right on the back bumper, and now Comstock slams onto the bottom of the racetrack, drives it really deep in there, and just was not able to keep that grip up, and you're going to see Rapallo win the battle coming up off the corner once again. I think that's in part to James, because Comstock drove it in there so deep he just had to get on the brakes to check up so that he didn't slide up into him.
And now the key for Comstock is making sure that you don't give up the position that you have, which is 8th at the moment, to Dylan Jones, who is trying to come through this field. He's up from the 17th position where he started this race to the 9th spot. So the 11 car coming nicely through the field. But you're right, if you're Comstock, you just have to make sure that you don't lose a spot trying to gain a spot, which is something that happens very easily here at Michigan, especially with the way drivers can get runs off of that high line on corner exit down the straightaway. It lends itself to making it very easy to get past if you don't hit your pass correctly. Meanwhile, up towards the front of the field, looks like we'll have a battle here momentarily between Dwayne Vincent and Austin Coop for the 5th position. Vincent has it. Coop wants it as they come down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and Coop gets an incredible run off of turn 2, looks to the inside of Dwayne Vincent. He's going to have the run. He's going to look to the inside of Dwayne Vincent, and he is going to have the advantage going off into turn 3. Dwayne Vincent runs a little wide. Looks like he's going to try to get the run off the corner, but it's not going to happen for him as Austin Coop will take that position. Now, here comes Comstock to the inside of Trevor Rapallo right behind these guys. This is a nice little 4-car battle for a top 5 position if whichever driver ends up winning it. And Comstock is going to make the move and pass Trevor Rapallo finally, and now sets his sights on Dwayne Vincent as he's going to have his work cut out for him, because that wily veteran's not going to pull over and just let him go. He's going to make him work for it as they head down the backstretch.
Comstock got loose off of 2 ever so slightly. Not enough to where Rapallo could get side by side with him, but it absolutely killed his momentum trying to get after Dwayne Vincent. So he'll try and gather it up and get another run off of turn 4. Pretty solid and steady line, though, out of the corner for the driver of the number 42 machine. Might be able to do something here as we get to turn 1, but everybody behind him is just trying to follow suit. I think they're all just trying to keep the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And the draft is so important on these long straightaways to stay in line with the cars around you and be able to use them to pull you down the straightaway. That is incredibly important. We saw that when teammates were drafting down the front stretch at the beginning of this race when Trevor Rapallo and David Washington used it. And you'll see that periodically throughout the night where when a driver is trying to make a pass on somebody and there's a couple of cars lined up on his outside, they'll lock bumpers like we used to see when they did the tandem drafting at the plate tracks. They'll lock bumpers and pick up a couple of miles an hour down the straightaways, and it'll be enough to get clear. But now here comes David Comstock to the inside of Dwayne Vincent. He had an incredible drive up off of turn 4. He carried it all the way to turn 1, and now they are battling side by side through the middle of 1 and 2. Comstock on the bottom of the racetrack, but just cannot make the car stick. And Dwayne Vincent's going to carry the speed down the back straightaway and get clear of Comstock as they head to 3.
Rapallo tried to go underneath Comstock on quarter exit. He had a better run, but he decided to check up, and that almost gave Dylan Jones the chance to come right along the outside of his teammate and maybe take that position away. But they'll get back to it again here out of turn 4. Comstock got a really good run out of the corner that time. This might just be the move that gets him the position. Looking for it as they go into turn 1, and yes, I think Comstock should be able to clear Dwayne Vincent, and he'll go up to the 6th position. Now it's on Rapallo to try and get a decent run on the bottom of turn 2, which has been so hard for pretty much everyone to do in this race tonight. But for not having the better of the 2 miles per hour on his tack going down the back, Rapallo was able to hang with that 13 car nicely, and now he'll try it again as they come out of turn 4. Rapallo now trying to go and hunt down that 7th position.
Yeah, but he's going to have to win this battle with Dwayne Vincent if he's going to do that. And unfortunately, Dwayne is not going to let him have that position very easily as they still battle side by side heading off into turn 1. Dwayne Vincent tries to pinch him down in the middle of the corner. It looks like it's going to work for him as he's battling hard on the exit. And it's like you mentioned, James, these guys just can get such a run off the corner using that high line. There's a little bit more banking up there, which allows these guys to carry that speed and give them the run that they need in order to win the battles. But Trevor Rapallo is not giving up that battle on the inside line as he is fighting pretty hard, and looks like he finally wins that battle as they come off turn 4. He moves ahead of Dwayne Vincent, but here comes Dylan Jones. He's going to apply the pressure and try to take that position away from him as they head to 1.
Jones looking for the spot, trying to get underneath Vincent here with that little pack still kind of sorted out. Also of note here, we might have another battle coming shortly between Mike Kelly and Carl Shedd for second, because Kelly's been able to come back to the rear bumper of the 45, so we'll keep eyes on that for you. But as it stands, it's all about watching this quartet of drivers, Jones, Vincent, Ewing, and Callisto, all right there trying to pounce on one another and capitalize on any mistakes that any one of these other 3 drivers around them might make.
Yeah, just going to have to keep an eye on that and see what happens. We are seeing a little bit of a connection issue, though, for the driver sitting in the 4th position right now, Joseph Tice. And it looks like he actually has fallen out of the server. The connection issues became too much, and he just was not able to stay in the server. So unfortunately for a driver that was running up inside of the top 5, Joseph Tice has officially been removed from this race. Unfortunate for him, but that's going to allow a lot of these other drivers to pick up a spot. Austin Coop will now move into that 4th position, but he's not going to hold that for very long because here comes David Comstock. And I can't say that I'm surprised about this, James, because I think I talk about it just about every week. David Comstock, as these long runs start to form, he is one of those drivers that just always finds his way to the front. And as we have a long green flag run forming right now, he's moved up inside the top 5, and he's running comparable lap times to the race leader right now. If he can just get some track position, he might be able to keep pace with David Washington.
Just a weather note for you. Not often that we get to do these on an RSR broadcast, but Tice, we believe, is a victim of connection issues that we suspect are stemming from the weather cell that stretches currently from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to New Brunswick in Canada. Rainstorms and heavy showers in spots all up and down the eastern seaboard. So he may well have been victim of some sort of power issue near his home. But I can only speculate so much, but we've heard folks across the sim tonight talk about issues on that front. So we'll just have to wait and see, because that may play into things as we progress through the course of this race, because the showers are expected to stay throughout the duration of tonight's event at Michigan. So We'll see how it happens in real life. But here within the sim, it's still bright sunshine, and David Comstock got really loose out of turn 4. Just about lost the rear end, and that gave the spot that he had to Dylan Jones. And then Trevor Rapallo came right behind and took another spot away. So Comstock now back to the 7th position.
Yeah, and all that work he did to get up inside the top 5, it just kind of got beat up on him just a little bit right there. But that was an incredible save by Comstock. I don't know how he held on to that. I think if that was any other driver, we would have been talking about a caution right there, because coming off turn 4, he was pointed towards pit road like he was all of a sudden going to dart down pit road at 200 miles an hour. Somehow he was able to hang on and get the car back under control and manage to salvage that and keep going. But now you have to worry about the right rear tire being hot after having that much of a slide. You have to wonder, how much did it affect that tire, and is it going to affect the rest of the run for him before he comes to pit road and gets tires put back on that car? I have to imagine that we won't see these drivers back on pit road, James, at least for another 15 to 20 laps. We're approaching 20 laps into this run, and they can go right around 40 to 45 laps on a tank of gas. So I still think we're pretty far away from them coming back to pit road. That could be a big problem for David Comstock now that he's heated that tire up.
Potentially, and I suppose the caveat to all that is if you really feel like your tires are going south, as they might just be on the 6 car of Austin Coop, because he was a little bit squirrely coming out of turn 2 and just let Dylan Jones go past him as they went through turn 3 and entered that corner, which to me says that Coop might be struggling with the handling of that car and most likely is fighting tire wear on that 6 machine. So might have to watch and see where he runs in the next few laps, because he's got Rapallo, Comstock, and Shane Ewing right there behind him if he slips up and has even more tire issues. So could be out towards the back of the top 10 from 5th here in a few laps if he's not careful. As it stands, though, you've got David Washington out in front by 2 seconds. Mike Kelly did manage to get around Carl Shed, so Kelly to second in the 2 car, and then Shed about a half a second back of Kelly. Then it's another second from Shed back to Dylan Jones, and then you've got Coop and Rapallo and Comstock and Ewing, like we talked about. Dwayne Vincent and AJ Browning rounding up the top 10, and that's where you'll find a really good side-by-side battle. Browning now looking underneath Vincent as they come through the corner, but Vincent gets that run on the high line, as we've talked about all night, and it should at least allow him to maintain the position at the line. Might be a different story when we get to turn 1, though.
Yeah, Dwayne Vincent is not one known to just let drivers by. It doesn't matter if it's lap 1, lap 50, or the last lap. He doesn't tend to pull over and let these guys by, and we're seeing that right now as he is continuing to fight, but he went a little wide in 1 and 2, which allowed AJ Browning to take that position away, and now here comes Nelson Rivera in the 7 car attempting to make the pass as well. He's on the bottom of the racetrack, which is always going to present a challenge. We've talked about that all night long. The lesser banking and just the lesser grip down there doesn't work out, but it works out for Rivera that time. He was able to slide ahead of Dwayne Vincent, so Dwayne will drop from that 9th position to the 11th, and we have an issue right behind these drivers. A couple of drivers down in the grass. I believe Brandon Bowie was one of those drivers. The number 44 machine, I didn't catch the other car that went down in the grass with him. It looks like that was the 37 machine of Giovanni Bramante. They both had a moment coming off of turn 4. Somehow they kept their car straight, but they did do a little bit of grass cutting down in the grass, James, coming off the corner. And it looks like there was actually a little bit of contact between those 2 drivers that sent them down through the grass. But again, they were able to get their cars back going, and they're back up to speed.
You're back up to speed. Everybody just kind of gathered it up and ate the lost time there to make sure that they still had a car to race, because if you lose control of the rear end here, it is very easy to have your car torn to pieces the way that Braden Whitaker's did early on in this race to bring out that first caution, or Kyle Barnes for that matter in the 2nd yellow, and Daniel Eberhardt, all just moving very quickly. And when you lose a car's rear end like that, it's really hard both to save it and to keep it from being really torn up. Chances are here, if you hit a wall, you're hitting it hard, and you're going to create a significant amount of damage for yourself in a way that you don't really see at a lot of these tracks.
Yeah, this is one of the few tracks where there really is no such thing as an easy hit with the wall, unless you're riding right up against the wall and you have an issue and just kind of slap it. If you hit the wall here, you're going to hit it a ton. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes here. But a nice little battle still going on around AJ Browning and Nelson Rivera. They were able to get clear of Dwayne Vincent just a handful of laps ago, and now Nelson Rivera has closed right in on the back bumper of AJ Browning, trying to take that position away and see if he can't move up to the 8th position, or I'm sorry, the 9th position, if he can get around AJ Browning. These guys have had a pretty good battle all night long. I think they've raced with each other pretty much since the beginning. Once AJ Browning slipped back just a little bit, continue to battle there though, but I have to believe as we get closer to the halfway point, we're looking at potentially, James, a one-stop race in this race. If they can go about another 10 laps or so, they would be able to make it to the end on just one stop from the end. So it might be a little bit of a game here to see who's going to take tires over the fuel versus who's going to just try to make it to the end on one stop.
And maybe more importantly, who can manage fuel, because it wouldn't be the first time we've seen fuel strategy come into play at Michigan, which has a tendency to be a fuel mileage track. And if it weren't for the late race caution, would have been a fuel mileage race. Meanwhile, David Comstock now looking above Austin Coop. No, Coop will come down pit road. So we're starting to see the run of drivers make it for green flag service, looking for folks anywhere in the middle of the pack to maybe towards the back end of the lead lap cars from about 15th to 20th. They should be on, it looks like, momentarily, and then from there you'll kind of see the wave work its way up through towards the front of the field and David Washington.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting call for me for Austin Coop and a couple of these other drivers that might make their way to pit road, because at this stage we cannot make it to the end on fuel. These drivers will have to come to pit road one more time. The fuel window is between 40 and 45 laps, depending on how well you manage your fuel, which puts these guys about 5 to 7 laps short of being able to make it to the end. So now you have to wonder, when do they come back to pit road for their next stop? And now that we have seen a couple of these drivers make their way to pit road, will we see more come in and elect to go with a two-stop strategy to the end? Or will they try to stretch their fuel and stretch their tires to where they can just do it on one stop? And then we have to wonder, James, can the drivers that do two stops make up enough time to get back up there and contend for a potential shot at the win?
Yeah, this could be really complicated. We'll see. I think some of these drivers, if you come down pit road now, you probably are looking for a yellow at some point, because I just don't think you can make it from here to the end, no matter how much fuel you save. So you're hoping for a yellow somewhere, maybe lap 70, lap 80, to sort of reset the cycle and get everybody to a point where they can come down, get tires and fuel, and be good to go to the end. But if we decide to stay green, and Michigan's done that too as well, one of the most recent green flag all the way races came here in 1999 with Dale Jarrett taking home the checkered flag. So that's a possibility as well. But won't matter at the moment to David Washington, because Washington is coming down pit road for service. So the 98 car, your leader, in for what should be 4 tires and fuel.
Yeah, and this is still right on the outside edge of being able to make it to the end. I don't think you'll see anybody be able to stretch this thing 48 laps like we'd see David Washington have to try. So you have to believe that he is going to be on a two-stop strategy as well. He slides into his box nice and cleanly and looks to be getting, of course, 4 tires and a full tank of gas. He's on that edge, though, James, where if he decided he wanted to try to push it, he might be able to make it to the end. But he's going to have to come off pit road and instantly be in fuel conservation mode, I believe, if he's going to make it to the end from here without stopping once again. I just don't see a way that you can run hard for 48 laps and make it to the end without running out of gas. I just don't think it's going to be possible for these guys.
We'll see and figure out what happens here in a bit over the next few laps. But right now, battle for the lead, which is now wrapped up and done and dusted. If Mike Kelly can't get back around the 11, Dylan Jones to the point with a really strong run on turn 4, got underneath Kelly and then completed it coming out of turn 2. So the 11 car, now the new leader of this race. And in the meantime, look who's come back up towards the front of this field. Carl Shedd in that 45 car. Talked a little bit about him tonight, but he has not been this close to the front of the field since the restart that we got on lap 18. So Shedd now coming into the picture. Gabe Wood a lap down, but has already come down pit road for service and has fresh tires. And this will be your first good example of the difference between new tires and old. You see how Wood can just blow by all of these drivers with that fresh Goodyear rubber. It makes a huge difference here at Michigan if you've got 4-sticker tires on the race car.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Dylan Jones right now, and he is running 40.1 lap times, second lap times. If you look back to Gabe Wood, who just came to pit road a couple of laps ago, right now he's running 38.4s. He just ran a 38.8, but he was passing a couple of cars, and that, of course, checked him up just a little bit. That's almost a 2-second difference between what we see our race leader currently running and the guys that have already come to pit road on fresh tires. David Washington is laying down some 38.2s right now, so he is certainly running some flyers, which this is going to be where you have to wonder, is the two-stop strategy for some of these drivers going to work? We know automatically Austin Coop will have to be on the two-stop strategy. He's well outside the window of being able to make it to the end on one stop. Can he take advantage of the fresh tires and make up that kind of time? When they come back to pit road for their second stop, they're going to give up anywhere from 35 to 45 seconds, depending on how quickly they get on and off pit road and how quickly their service is when they get to their box. Can you make up that kind of time with the tire difference? They're making up 2 seconds a lap. I think it really just depends on when they come to pit road and how much time they have left.
Yeah, you'll need to do it within about maybe 15 to 20 laps to go to have any chance of being able to make up that time. And that presumes that, you know, the drivers that you're chasing already have worn tires and you're outrunning them by 2 seconds already. So it's complicated to tell and hard to tell at this point. I think we just need to see how these strategies play out, how this race plays out, and whether or not it's shaping up to be a race that we see go green for a little bit, or if we get a yellow flag to break everything up. That's the one thing we're kind of waiting on and wary of, and if that happens, that definitely does shake up the strategy. So in the meantime, you've got Mike Kelly now under fire from Carl Shed, that 45 car, looking and trying to find a way around the two, who has really fallen off here in the last few laps, struggling for pace. Gave up the lead to Dylan Jones a few laps ago. Now one of the Power Tech cars trying to find its way around the Sarah Kelly and Sewell machine that comes down the front straightaway.
Man, and Carl Shed got an incredible run up off turn 4, closes right in on the back bumper of Mike Kelly. Now looks to the outside. He goes wide going off into turn 1. Look how high up Carl Shed ran going off into turn 1. He tried to carry that speed off the corner, but did not get the run he was looking for this time. Comes off the corner, and he is closing that gap again on Mike Kelly, but not quite as much as he'd like. And now as we see them head to turn 3, he's right back on the back bumper, running up in that third groove. I've not seen that much here tonight. I've been curious to see if this works out for him the longer this race gets, because I've not seen that yet where these drivers had ventured that high up. That was really impressive for me to see him go up there and not lose a ton of time, but he's not making it work to the point where he's able to pass Kelly. He's just able to get a good run off the corner and get right back up on the back bumper of him. And once again, we see Shed running a lot higher than these guys in the middle of the corner. Very interesting for me, James. I did not expect to see that at all.
Well, it might be a case of Shed just experimenting and changing lines and seeing what works, especially with tires this old. If we go green the rest of the way, we'll probably be running on about the same sort of tires that you would see at this point in the race right now. So in the meantime, though, here comes Kelly now looking for the pit road entrance. So the number 2 machine comes down pit road. He'll have company as well from Bruce Ackerman and Nick Silver. So the 3 of those cars coming down pit road for service, waiting on Jones, Shed, and Rapallo now to come for 4 tires and fuel.
If I'm a driver, if I'm a crew chief, I feel very comfortable coming in at this point and being able to make it to the end on fuel. But Mike Kelly, I thought he slid through his box, but he was able to get that car stopped and somehow managed to get it in his box without sliding through. But yeah, I think at this point, and you're going to see a host of drivers coming in now, as it looks like Dwayne Vincent's about to make his way to pit road as well. I think now that these guys have made it into that window, you're going to see more of them come to pit road, and now the leaders are coming to pit road. Dylan Jones, Carl Shed, Trevor Rapallo, David Comstock, they all are on pit road, and I'm not surprised at all at this. Now that we had somebody inside the top 5 that has played their hand and come to pit road in what we now know will be the final run for them, we know these guys are going to make it to the end on fuel from here.
That just brought everybody in down pit road, and I think important to note, 40 laps to go here, but that is just on the edge of the fuel window. So definitely will be some fuel conservation from somebody. You can make it to the end, but you will have to save fuel starting right now in order to do that. And this is where we start seeing our kaleidoscope of strategies come into play, whether or not you're saving for the end trying to make it happen, or whether or not you're trying to run down people on a two-stop strategy like Austin Coop is. You talked about it earlier, Macklin. Now we're really going to see it start to proliferate, and we're really going to see a shakeup here in the running order as well.
Yeah, and we're waiting to see the rest of the drivers come to pit road. A couple of notables that have not come to pit road yet: Shane Ewing, Brandon Bowie, Nelson Rivera. These drivers have not made it to pit road. Actually, Nelson Rivera is on pit road right now. He's down and away getting his 4 tires, and it looks like Shane Ewing will finally surrender the race lead and come to pit road. So now we're just waiting on Brandon Bowie to see if he's going to come in. He does not elect to come in this time, so Bowie will take control of the race lead, and Shane Ewing is on pit road now, trying to just get his tires for the final time here tonight. And when it all cycles back around, it'll be David Washington leading the race, and he's going to have a pretty hefty lead over a couple of these drivers that came in behind him. It looks like Austin Coop may end up being in second when it's all said and done.
We'll wait here for a few laps and see how things cycle out, because once Bowie comes down, we should know where just about everybody else stands in this as far as pits go, because we should have completed the cycle at this point. Here comes Bowie as we say it, by the way. Bowie comes down pit road. We'll look for 4 tires and fuel, and that should complete this round of green flag pit stops.
Yeah, waiting for Bowie to come off pit road. It looks like he is down and away, and we'll finally, looks like we're getting ready to finally cycle through the rest of our pit stops. And I was wrong. It looks like Anthony DeBarro will be in second when it's all said and done. I'm not sure how that happened, because he was running towards the back. I think maybe he came to pit road a couple laps sooner than everybody else. He is 5.1 seconds behind our race leader. So David Washington still out there in his own zip code right now, James. He's just been on a rail all night long. Shouldn't really be a surprise. These bigger tracks have been his forte for most of the season, so shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. But now we have to just wait and see how these strategies play out. I'm very excited to see what happens with the drivers that are going to elect to do a 2-stop run to the end, and see where they end up coming out of this thing when it's all said and done.
We'll see. Get ready to sort through everybody, but now that we have completed that round of green flag pit stops, we can take a moment to go and tackle our iRacing Midway Race Break, which unsurprisingly is brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. In the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing with officially sanctioned racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, the Car Store, USAC, Block Pond GT, VLN Endurance, and more, just to name a few. David Washington is your leader on lap 66 in tonight's RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series event from Michigan. Anthony DeBarro currently runs in the 2nd position, and then it's Austin Coop 3rd, Lionel Callisto 4th, and Gabe Wood to round out your top 5. Mike Kelly got down pit road, came back out in the 6th position. Dylan Jones runs in 7th at the moment. Then Carl Shedd is found in 8th, and then you have Trevor Rapallo 9th and Nick Silver to round out your top 10.
AJ Browning sits in the 11th position right now, followed by Nelson Rivera, and then David Comstock in the 13th and 14th positions. I'm sorry, 12th and 13th positions. I got my numbers a little crossed right there. Sean Casto is 14th. Then we have Shane Ewing in 15th. Dwayne Vincent is 16th, and 17th goes to Corey Wolf. Sean Boundy is 18th, and Doug Roth is 19th. And the last car on the lead lap right now is Brandon Bowie. He's back in 20th.
First car lap down is Bruce Ackerman, currently sits in the 21st position, and then Gia Bramanti 7 laps down in 22nd. Andrew Freenars is one of the ones that's been hit with connection issues tonight as part of that rainstorm we mentioned earlier. He runs 23rd. Joseph Tice also is in the camp of weather-affected races this evening, currently sits in the 24th position. Nathan Little runs in 25th, and then Randy Yoakum sits in the 26th position. Then Thomas Lattimore is 27th, Daniel Eberhardt 28th. These drivers all out of the race now as part of crashes that took place early on in this race. And then it's Kyle Barnes, Braden Whitaker, Scott Walter, and Douglas Wyatt running 29th through 32nd. And that has been your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. For a limited time, you can visit iRacing.com/World of Outlaws and take advantage of exclusive promo codes to get yourself in the sim with a 1-year membership for half the price. And since we've hit the midway point, we've taken care of our midway's break. We'll give you a bit of an extended break as we go non-stop, so you don't miss any of the action. But we will take a break here as David Washington comes down pit road for service. You're watching the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
Hi guys, I'm Scott Speed, driver of this amazing Volkswagen Beetle GRC car. I got good news for the iRacing fam. We got this coming in. I'm currently working on it myself personally to make sure that it is as accurate as possible. With the addition of dirt and now this mean car, it is gonna be so fun. And it's gonna be available free to all the iRacing members. Personally, I can't wait to get out there and race you guys on it.
Welcome back to LSRTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking as you ride on board with the driver of the number 6 car, Austin Coupe, here, working lap 72 of 100. About to complete lap 72, actually, as we get done with this race at Michigan here. And not too long, but still a lot of racing left to go. Of note here, your leader, David Washington, just came down to fulfill the second pit stop of his 2-stop strategy that he is running, as is Austin Coupe. So Washington now will just have to run his way back up through the field in order to win this race. And we'll have the fresh tires, but needs to go regain that track position. Meanwhile, we've got drivers at the front of the field that are going to try and stretch it and make it work. I think you've got Mike Kelly, Dylan Jones, Carl Shedd, Trevor Rapallo, just about everybody up there in the top 5, top 10 even, trying to stretch it and make it without coming down pit road.
And this is where we're going to find out what happens for these drivers. Now that we've seen the first of the 2-stop drivers come back to pit road, they're going to have about 25 laps to go, 26 laps to go, to make their way back up through the field and see if they can take advantage of the tires. And looking at the race leaders right now, they're running 39 flats, 39 ones right now. I'm waiting to see. David Washington looks like he's running a 38.14, so that's a full second a lap. Problem is he's 18 seconds back. He will make up that time, but he's going to have a bigger issue, and that's going to be passing all these cars that are in between him and the race leader. He has the speed in the tires and in the car to make up that time. The question is, can he work his way through the traffic and get back to the race leader with enough time to actually do something with it?
And there's always the potential of trouble that I don't think we actively think about, but it's just kind of a numbers game, really. If you have to come through, 20 cars as opposed to 5 cars to get back to the lead, then you exponentially increase your chances of running into someone, making contact with somebody, getting loose while racing with somebody, and you just open the door up that much more to run into some sort of problem that wasn't necessarily yours to begin with. So that's another thing I think we have to watch with Washington. That being said, he's been the fastest car here by a significant margin all night long. So if anybody's going to be able to make it back up towards the front, Washington's the man, and now he's got, maybe about 2 seconds back on the leaders from when he pitted only a few laps ago. So the 98 car is coming back to the front again.
Yeah, and while he's doing that, we have a nice battle beginning to brew right at the outside of the top 10. Sean Casto, Dwayne Vincent are battling for the 11th and 12th position, and right in front of them, Corey Wolf holds the top 10. So a nice little 3-car battle going on for what could be a position inside the top 10. They're about 11 seconds off the race lead, and they do have that number 98 machine fast approaching them. But while this can go on, they're going to battle for that position and see what happens. Dwayne Vincent just trying to get up into the top 10, not having the night that I expected him to have. This is a track that screams Dwayne Vincent's name typically, but just doesn't seem to have the speed in that 13 car. But now he gets side by side with Casto. He goes all the way to the bottom. Casto goes up by the wall, and it looks like they're going to have a pretty nice battle as they head off into one. Dwayne Vincent down there on the bottom trying to take that position away, and it actually looks like Casto might have pulled over and let him have it, and indeed that is the case. Dwayne Vincent will now move up into the 11th position.
What was that about you saying Dwayne Vincent didn't have quite as much speed as he normally does here? Because that looked like a pretty powerful move to me. So Vincent now up to the 11th position there. Try and set his sights on Corey Wolf, who sits maybe about 5 or 6 car lengths ahead of that 13.7-up machine in the 10th position. So Vincent knocking on the door for a top 10, trying to make things happen. And then you've got a ways up to Nick Silver, about 2-3 seconds, I'd say, to the number 24 machine. So this is definitely your best group of cars racing together on track right now. Everybody else has really strung themselves out here as we've gone green flag since lap 18. It's almost lap 80 now. So nearly 60 laps of green flag conditions.
Yeah, that's what we expect to see when we come to Michigan. This is a track that, as you mentioned, it brings on long green flag runs, brings on fuel mileage races, and it opens the door for strategies like we're seeing here tonight, where we have different drivers that are trying to make something happen. And I like some of the calls that we're seeing. Austin Coop made an aggressive call. He's pretty far outside of the cutoff right now coming into tonight as far as making it into the playoffs. You're running out of time to necessarily get in on points, so why not take the gamble? Try to score a victory if you can. If you can be aggressive enough and it works out for you, maybe you can steal a win and lock yourself into the playoffs. This is the time to do that, to give yourself that opportunity, and I like the aggressiveness we're seeing out of some of these drivers. But for Mike Kelly, he just wants this thing to stay green and hopefully be able to hang on. He's still got about 14 seconds over David Washington. Washington was gaining about a second a lap, but now that has went down to about 0.7 of a second a lap. He's not making up the time that he was when he first came off pit road, which is definitely going to play into the favor of a driver like Mike Kelly. He might actually be able to hang on to this thing, but he's going to have a battle here behind him as Dylan Jones is right on his back bumper trying to take that lead away from him here.
The 11 machine here coming, trying to make things happen, looking and trying to find a way around the 2 machine of Mike Kelly. These two are well out in front of Carl Shedd. It's 3 seconds back to the 45, so you don't have to worry about giving up positions if you decide to try and take a risk, run a risky line, and it doesn't work out for you. I think the bigger issue, though, if you decide to gamble and try and maybe go down to the bottom, will be the tire wear, because we've seen how bad it is all night long, and it's something you have to take into consideration here, because if you're any of these drivers, you're out, and you're staying out for the rest of this race. What you have right now is what you're going to have when we get to lap 100, and your tires are going to be much more worn off at that point. So anything you burn here, you lose towards the back end of this race.
Yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens here for these drivers, but a pretty nice battle, though, starting to begin to brew up here for the race lead. As Dylan Jones, he was within 0.2 of the race leader just a couple of laps ago, but he went really wide in 1 and 2 and gave up some of that time. He was not able to get a good run down the straightaway either, so Mike Kelly just trying to manage here inside the last 18 laps or so of this race. This is a pretty big moment for Mike Kelly. He doesn't have a win yet this season, so this would give him a win that would secure himself a spot in the playoffs. He's sitting 12th on the playoff grid right now with no wins, which is in the playoffs, but a win guarantees you that spot. So certainly what he wants to do in these last 15 laps or so is hang on to that lead. Don't get a caution to bunch everybody back up. Just hang on and go to victory lane here tonight.
But the main threat I see to the 2 car might not necessarily be any of the drivers around him. It might just be that first driver who is on the 2-stop strategy, David Washington, who has cleared all of Sean Casto and Corey Wolf and Dwayne Vincent in the span of about 3 laps. And that gap now is down to 11 seconds to Mike Kelly. So he's got 16 laps to work with, going to be 15 here when he crosses the stripe. But Washington is coming. It's just a matter of whether or not he has enough time.
Well, but the problem is he's catching a lot of cars that are racing for position now. He's right on that back bumper of Dwayne Vincent. And these drivers more than likely will not just lay over very easily, although we do see him get around Dwayne Vincent pretty simply as they head off into turn 1 right there. I have to believe as he gets further up into the top 10, top 5, that these drivers are going to be a little bit more aggressive with him, try to hold him back just so that they can try to keep their position and try to keep him behind them, which is going to present a problem, and it will slow him down. Certainly that gap, it only closed by about a half a second this last time by. I'm waiting to see what it's going to be when he gets to the stripe now. It was 11.4 the last time they crossed the stripe, and this time it's 11.1, so he only gained 0.3 of a second. And at that rate, he will not be able to catch the race leader and be able to do anything with him. At that rate, he probably would only get up to about 5th. So he's certainly going to have to pick up the pace if he's going to catch the leader and be able to challenge him for the race lead here.
We'll see. We'll watch. We'll wait. I think we also need to consider Dylan Jones' situation. Because of all these drivers, he may actually be in the best position because he's just been sitting right behind Mike Kelly the entire run since they came down about 20 laps ago to get that final round of pit stops completed. And he's been the one that's been able to draft off the rear of the 2 machine and not necessarily burn tires, burn fuel as much as the 2 car has. So Jones may be the driver above all here who's in the best position to claim this, especially if Kelly has any issues with fuel mileage as we get towards the end.
It's just going to be one of those deals we'll have to wait and see. Trying to look back and see when Mike Kelly came to pit road last, and he came on lap 60, which puts him at 40 laps exactly. Which I believe is at least somewhat comfortable. He might have to do a little bit of saving, but I feel like he's in a pretty good position at that point. But he can't think about fuel saving right now as Dylan Jones is right on the back bumper of him. And now we do finally have that battle for the race lead that we were talking about just a couple of laps ago as Dylan Jones has put the pressure on. He might have been told by his crew chief, that driver in front of you might be saving a little bit of fuel. Put some pressure on and make him run a little bit harder, maybe make him run out of gas.
That's a possibility, and this might be the best run we've seen Jones get all run long. Here comes the 11 car. Can he make it stick on the bottom and get a good run? Oh, they make contact! Contact between the 11 and the 2. What kind of changes is that going to bring? And what kind of damage does Dylan Jones have or not have? Very, very loose off the corner. Both of them are very loose. That's going to bring Carl Shed right back into this. Got maybe about a second back on Jones, and Kelly did Shed just from that one incident. So I don't know what was going on there. You might have been right. Maybe Jones got the call to put the pressure on Kelly just a little bit more, but that nearly was disastrous for both of our 2 leaders.
Man, that could have been huge, but I'll tell you what that did do. It allowed a guy named Carl Shed to close in just a little bit. He was 2.2 seconds back. He's 1.4 back now. This also helps David Washington because that gap, it was almost 10 seconds. It's now 8.7. So inside the last 10 laps, he has an opportunity now that this happened, but he's still got his work cut out for him as he is back in the 10th position. He hasn't quite caught AJ Browning and Nick Silver, who are right in front of him for position, and they're racing pretty heavily for that 8th and 9th position. They got just a little bit of a gap between them, but they're not going to lay over very easily for this driver. They're racing for a pretty good finish and are certainly looking for some points to try to move them closer to the playoffs as well. So don't expect to see them just lay over. But this battle up front's not over yet either because Dylan Jones, he might have a little bit of right front fender damage, but it doesn't seem to be affecting behind that car as he's back to the bottom of the racetrack trying to get to the inside of Mike Kelly as they come off too, but Kelly got an incredible drive up off the corner and is able to open that gap back up to about 3 car lengths down the backstretch.
They just got 10 laps to go last time by here, so now we really are starting to get down to the end of this race. And if anybody's going to make a push, I think especially if you're Shed or Rapallo, you're going now or you're just holding on and hoping you can make it to the end, because 2 seconds is not a gap you want to have with, oh, say maybe 5, 4, 3 laps to go. You're going to have to start pushing here at some point. So part of the question might just be who blinks first, who makes the first move, who presses the gas and decides to push a little bit harder to make things happen. Jones might have the answer to that question. He got really loose off the corner though, and that's been the problem with the 11 car all night long. Every time he tries to get a good run off the corner, it just doesn't quite stick when he puts the power down. Those rear wheels have been fighting that 11 car for the majority of this race, and especially now that we're down to it, coming now to 9 laps to go. So Jones really fighting the car and trying to make it happen, but Kelly still has the lead for the moment.
Yeah, Kelly is playing defense in a big way right now. He drives it off into the corner, trying to get as much grip in that car as he can, but also maybe just thinking about trying to save a little bit of fuel while he can, but he can't think about that too much, as now Dylan Jones got a great run up off the corner, goes to the inside, and they are side by side as they head to turn 3. Can Kelly hold him off as they get to the corner? Kelly goes wide, now tries to run down the track and pinch Dylan Jones down. Looks like it's going to work for him as he's able to hold him off, and he clears Dylan Jones coming off turn 4.
Clears Jones off of turn 4, but for how long is that going to work, and how much is this racing going to drag Carl Shed back into this? It's now down to 0.8 of a second. Shed picked up 0.3 on the leaders that last time by. Now 7 laps to go, and now you have to wonder, if you are Carl Shed, do you just have a chance? Do you try and push it? Do you wonder if they make things happen? So
Mike Kelly made contact with the wall off turn 2. That could have been detrimental for him, but somehow he was able to keep that car straight and keep the momentum up and stay ahead of Dylan Jones coming off the corner. But now they're back side by side here as Dylan Jones got another great run up off the corner, but here comes Carl Shed. We cannot stop thinking about him. That gap was 0.8 of a second, as you just mentioned, James. Now it's down to 0.3 of a second. He closed another half a second. The more these two in front of him race, the closer he gets. And how about Trevor Rapallo, winner at Daytona? He's right there behind him as well. Got 3 Aegis / PowerTech drivers right on the back bumper of Mike Kelly. They all want a piece of this race lead, but Mike Kelly is not giving up an inch right now as he continues to battle hard with Dylan Jones as they head to 3.
And this is Kelly's best shot all year to win a race. He hasn't been near this close to the front. I think the last time he was close enough to the front was Atlanta, but it might not matter because here comes Dylan Jones to the inside. And what a surprise here that Jones was the man who won the race at Atlanta in March, and he might just snatch Michigan from Mike Kelly as well. The 11 car underneath the 2 as they go into turns 1 and 2. And if they slip up, Carl Shed is now officially there. Might just get a run here on the outside of Jones to go get second as they come down the back straightaway.
Carl Shed could be Mike Kelly's best friend right now. He would have been Mike Kelly's best friend right now if he didn't get the run that he got off the corner. He was able to clear Dylan Jones. Mike Kelly was hoping those two stayed side by side for a little while to allow him to try to open up a gap. That didn't happen though, as Carl Shed easily made his way into the second position. Now he gets a great run up off the corner, and he too now will look to the inside of Mike Kelly, carries that momentum all the way down the straightaway. He almost takes the race lead at the stripe. It was a very close finish, and he's going to clear him as they head to 1. He's able to carry that momentum all the way down the straightaway and take the race lead away from Mike Kelly with just 3 or 4 laps to go. And now Kelly is not going to be able to get back to him as they come off the corner. He's trying to hold off Dylan Jones. He gets a good run, but not enough to close back in on Carl Shed.
And you have to wonder, especially if you're Kelly and Jones, you think about the contact that they made a few laps ago that cost them 2 seconds of time, and that's the difference right now on track. Carl Shed is still running those 2 down if they don't make contact like that, but now Jones is fighting his car. Kelly doesn't look like he has the drive off of the corners, and this might just be Carl Shed's race here now with 3 laps to go, unless Kelly can do something about it. He drives it deep in 1 and 2. He's not done fighting yet.
Not at all. As they come off the corner, Jones continues to try to take that position away, and you can see how sideways these guys are off the corner. as they are just kicking that car on the edge of out of control every single lap. Mike Kelly is trying to get back to Carl Shed, but he's just having a hard time. And now Dylan Jones closes right in on the back bumper of him, trying to loosen him up, take some air off that rear spoiler, and see if he can't take that position away. It did not work, though, as Kelly was able to get the grip and carry that speed down the straightaway to get away from Dylan Jones. And now he's just trying to hang on, hoping for a mistake inside the final 2 laps from Carl Shed to see if he can't try to capitalize on it and take the lead back.
2 laps to go. Going to be a lap and a half when they come back down the back straightaway. Jones now underneath Kelly for second in a race of what might have been, what could have been, because Shed is now out in front by 0.3 of a second. That lead's increasing as he comes through turn 4. The last time around here before he gets the white flag. Just over a lap to go for Carl Shed.
And off turn 4, Dylan Jones was trying to battle Mike Kelly, but he got loose. He almost spun out, hangs on to it, but will lose a couple of positions. Mike Kelly hangs on to second, and Trevor Rapallo moves into third. But the race is on for Carl Shed. He's got about 5 to 6 car lengths over these guys. Just needs a mistake-free couple of corners, and he's going to get his first victory of the season.
And we look at everybody up to the front. Washington's only in the 8th spot, so the one-stop strategy has been the way to go. And now Carl Shed's just got 2 corners here left, and he can join teammates Andrew Farinars and Daniel Eberhardt as drivers for the Power Tech Solutions stable to win here in the RSR Full Throttle Cup Series in 2017. Checkered flag out for Carl Shed to claim his first victory of the season at Michigan, and we have 1 car going around behind on the front straightaway. That is Daniel Eberhardt of all people.
Yeah, Eberhardt just got up against the wall off turn 4, spun it out, hit the inside wall a little bit, and just spun through the grass. Fortunately, it was the last lap, no caution, no other cars were involved. He just spun through the grass. He was already having a pretty rough night. He was 24th and about 55 laps down, so unfortunate for them. But how about Carl Shed gets his first victory on the season? He came into this race 14th in the points. He had a playoff spot based on points, but now he's locked into the playoffs and doesn't have to worry about it over the next 10 races. He can just go out there and try to rack up a few more.
He'll have teammates around him and Eberhardt and Farinars to keep him on the straight and narrow as we come towards the playoffs, and they're beginning in September. But I think the story of Shed's night will come down to Kelly and Jones getting into it and racing too hard amongst themselves, and then the pit strategy just not working out for Washington. But that's not necessarily to take away from Shed, because he was consistently in the top 5 all night long and had a really fast race car and just executed better than his competitors around him when it was time to.
Yeah, absolutely. He just had the speed. It looks like he managed his tires really well on that last green flag run, was able to capitalize on those 2 battling at the front. Mike Kelly tried to do everything he could to hang on and get that first win on the season, but just came up a little bit short. And he actually came up short at the line, too. He finishes in the 3rd position. Trevor Rapallo was able to sneak by him on the last lap. I actually didn't catch that until just now, but just an incredible drive for all of these drivers. And I really enjoyed the differing strategies here tonight, James. Seeing these guys go for the 2-stop strategy versus the 1-stop strategy, that's one thing that makes these races really exciting, because you see these guys and the different varying speeds that they have because of the difference in tires. It just, to me, it adds an element to these races that's really exciting for us to call.
Well, we have our thoughts about the tire strategies, but we'll need to talk to the drivers and see how they progressed over the course of this race and manage their pit strategies. But we'll do that on the other side of this break. And we'll take a moment here to reset ourselves before we talk to our top 3 finishers. You are watching the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
iRacing. You wanted the best, you got them for a breast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws.
Welcome back to coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV. We have completed the 15th round of 36 in this 2017 championship here at Michigan International Speedway, where Carl Shedd has come away with the victory. And now that Carl Shedd has managed to claim his first win of the season, it's time to go ahead and bring you our full field rundown for the race, which is brought to you tonight by RealSimRacing.com. RealSimRacing.com has a league for every iRacing driver, including the Winston Cup Series on Wednesday nights and the Midnight Thunder Speedway Series on Thursday nights. For more information on them, you can visit them at www.realsimracing.com. Carl Shedd comes away with his first victory of the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series season tonight at Michigan. Trevor Rapallo finished in the second position. Mike Kelly and Dylan Jones almost had the race to themselves at the end, but battled each other a little bit too hard and gave away track position and end up third and fourth when the checkered flag flies tonight. Shane Ewing with a solid, maybe a little bit quiet top five for him, but he will take it nonetheless in that Rayovac Ford Fusion. Nelson Rivera with a strong finish as well brings the Verizon Fios car home in the sixth position tonight. David Comstock finishes in the seventh spot. Another solid run for him as he begins to build momentum towards the playoffs. David Washington was the first car on the two-stop strategy, trying to drive his way back up towards the front of the field, but just didn't have enough time to do it. Finishes 8th this evening, and then A.J. Browning and Nick Silver round out your top 10.
Dwayne Vincent comes home with an 11th place finish here tonight. Sean Casto will finish 12th, and we have Corey Wolf in the 13th position. Sean Boundy finishes 14th. Brandon Bowie, after running up inside the top 5 for a little bit of this race, he finishes 15th, and we have Doug Roth coming home 16th. Anthony DeBarro had a fast car all night long, or at the beginning of this race at least, got caught up in an incident on the restart. He will finish 17th. And then Austin Coop was another one of those drivers that attempted the two-stop strategy. Did not work out for him very well at all. He finishes in the 18th position. Then we have Lionel Callisto coming home 19th, and Gabe Wood will finish 20th, and he was the last car to finish on the lead lap here tonight.
Only car one lap down in this race, Bruce Ackerman. Won last week at Daytona, finishes 21st tonight. Andrew Farinars was bitten by the weather bug here. Not often that we have rainstorms affect connection issues, but he was one of the unlucky parties that got hit by those and ended up in the 22nd position at the end of the night. Gio Bramanti left early in this race, had trouble early, and just had a little bit too much damage to continue. And then you had Daniel Eberhardt, who did actually manage to make his way back out onto the racetrack after a spectacular crash early on in this race where he flipped upside down and went end over end on the back straightaway, but managed to bring it home in 24th. Joseph Tice was another one of the connection drivers, but never could get back on, unlike Farinars, and finished 64 laps down in 25th. Nathan Little finishes 26th. Randy Yoakum comes home 22nd. And then Kyle Barnes was the main man who was the star of that second caution, the big wreck on the back straightaway on the restart, finished 28th. And then Thomas Lattimore, Braden Whitaker, Scott Walter, and Douglas Wyatt finish in the final 4 positions this evening. So there's your full field rundown for tonight, brought to you once again by RealSimRacing.com. And now we turn to victory lane and turn to the driver of the number 45 machine, and that's Carl Shedd, who comes through and breaks through for the Power Tech Racing team and gets his first victory of 2017. A big, big win for the 45 machine. And first, Carl, congratulations to you on getting it done for the first time this season. And I'd say Just talk about the decision to go on the one-stop strategy. We knew the field was going to be split between one-stopping and two-stopping as it ran green over the course of the rest of the race after that restart on lap 18. So what went behind the decision to go on the one-stop, and how did you make that work for you?
It was interesting. I saw Dave dart down onto pit road and was kind of looking at the fuel and looking at Dylan ahead of me, and I thought, well, hell, I'm beat on this strategy. If I jump in with Dave, I'm already a lap short, and you saw he blitzed us by 2 or 3 seconds that run. So I thought, well, hell, I guess my best bet is to stick on this other one, stay out, and see what happens.
And we looked at some of the drivers around you here in the final running order. Dave came down pit road early and just couldn't quite get the two-stop strategy working. And Rapallo and Kelly and Jones were all kind of right there with you. Kelly and Jones raced each other, I think, out of a win. You were able to get back to them, though. But you were consistently quick all night long. And especially in those last 20 laps, as you see the 11 and the 2 running in front of you, the way they were with the piece that you had, just take us through your mentality of how you navigated that last fifth of the race.
Yeah, I think we got lucky on tires because the fuel window was so tight there. At least I'm paranoid. I've run out before. And I think that's every driver's worst nightmare, to have a good top 5 and then run out of fuel. So I think it was probably just it was over saving the tires. These newer builds, I used to be really decent at saving tires. I just can't do it anymore, guys. I don't know what the deal is. So, I guess I have to pretend I'm saving fuel from now on to save tires. But I think that helped at the end there. Those guys got up there and they got to battling, and Trevor and I just had enough rubber left on them to maybe give it a go. I think that's really what it came down to. I think I had maybe 1.5 gallons left, so oversaved a little. Thought I might have saved myself out of a win there. But, a little bit of luck in there, too, for sure, with strategy. I mean, Dave, as you guys saw, was gone. There's no beating him, so we had to try something different.
And now we've heard it from just about everybody in the PowerTech Aegis collective, but we haven't really talked to you about it yet. So now that you join the likes of, at least within your stable, Daniel Eberhardt and Andrew Farinars with a victory here, now that you've qualified for the playoffs, how does that change the way you race these last 10 races up until the beginning of the playoffs in September? Or does it change it at all? Do you just kind of do the same thing you've been doing?
Yeah, I like to always just kind of race the same way. I don't like to force my hand, see what I've got, see if, I legitimately, I don't like to race over my head. I like to try and race people with respect. It's, competitive out there. We got a lot of really good guys. So sometimes you push harder than you should, but I don't think it'll change. I don't think I'll be any more or less aggressive. I'm a little more on the safe side lately because I had a great start to the season, the first 6 or 7 races, and then dropped off the map. Seems like every time I'm, 30 laps into a race this last 2 months, I've been, crashed and in the pits. So, I'll just be cautiously optimistic and just race the race I've got in front of me.
I know there are a lot of people that make it happen for you, so go ahead and give your thanks and your shout-outs and send the love to all the people that you need to and all the people that you want to for making it happen on this number 45 team.
Yeah, 10-4, man. I'd love to thank my teammates over at Aegis and PowerTech, Dylan, Andy, Andrew, James, Trevor, Joseph, Bruce. Cato joins us there sometimes from time to time, and Julio and Ackerman. And, of course, my wife and kids for putting up with this hobby. As you guys know, get some freedom there. And, yeah, that's it, man. The good people around us, helping us out all week, getting us ready. So I appreciate you fellas in the booth, Cisco, and we don't see you much, but we'll see you soon. And you fellas take care.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, Carl, and we'll see you next week in Sonoma.
10-4, fellas. Take care.
So there's your race winner tonight, Mr. Carl Shedd, who now joins our list of race winners in the 2017 season and joins the playoff grid as well. From him, we turn now to the runner-up of tonight's races, teammate Trevor Rapallo, who is standing by with our Brian Macklin.
Yeah, I have caught up with the guy that finishes second here tonight, Trevor Rapallo. You got a great run here tonight. It was your best run since your victory at Daytona. You come home second. Take us through your night.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely a good run for me. I think starting from the pole was a good thing, and then getting those long green flag runs. I think me and Carl we're on the same strategy there. So I think, ultimately the strategy made that work. And then, just getting nice long green flag runs really played into my strength.
Yeah, and talk about the long green flag runs. How tiring is that on a track like this where you're running 210, 215 miles an hour all the way down these straightaways, then having to slow down to 170, 175? How hard is it to run a race this long under green flag for the entire time? Our last restart came back on lap number 24, and you guys had to run the entirety of that last 76 laps under green. How difficult was that?
Yeah, man, I'm sweating big time right now. I mean, my back is like soaked. But and that's the thing. These guys are so good. You've got to make those pit stops clean, and you can't give up any time anywhere on the track, because if you do, they take advantage of it. It's not, these guys are some of the best I've ever raced with. So you just can't afford to make any mistakes. But yeah, really, really mentally draining and physically exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just your second top five on the season, and obviously you haven't had the season you were looking for since that win at Daytona, but in the last few weeks you've had a couple of really solid runs. You finished 12th at Charlotte, you finished 8th at Dover, and then 14th last week at Daytona. Have we started to see the momentum shift for you guys, and as we head closer and closer to the playoffs, do you feel like that momentum is finally starting to head in the direction you need it to as we get closer to the playoffs?
I do, yeah. I think some of those finishes you mentioned recently, actually, I could have finished a little bit better. Just things didn't go my way for whatever reason. But kind of that short track stint there where we hit Martinsville and Bristol, and I definitely struggled and got caught up in a lot of wrecks, and it's frustrating. But now I think it's kind of cleaned up, and I'm getting to some of these tracks that I'm better at, some of these bigger tracks and mile and a halves, and so yeah, hopefully momentum has turned around for me.
Well, we congratulate you on your second place finish here tonight, but before we let you go, just want to give you a chance to say thank you to your sponsors and say hello to any friends or family that might be watching. Who makes it happen for you on the number 9 machine, Trevor?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to thank Aegis and Julio, first of all, for the opportunity to come and race this league. Dave, Joseph, Dylan, Ross, Giovanni, Carl, Andrew, Daniel, Bruce, Andy. There's so many guys that we kind of hang out with on Monday nights. And most importantly, James, my spotter. He wasn't here tonight, but definitely like to thank him for sticking with me as my spotter all season, and getting a second place when he's not here kind of sucks. I wish he would have been here to enjoy this with me. But big thanks to him. Thanks to Racing Electronics, Fan Vision, and Chef Andy's Lobster Rolls. Thank you, guys.
Well, congrats on your second place finish, and good luck next week at the road course at Sonoma.
Thanks, man.
All right, that's Trevor Rapallo. He gets his best finish since winning at Daytona. He finishes second here tonight at Michigan. I'm going to slide just a little bit further down pit road now and catch up with the driver that was so close to getting a victory here tonight, Mike Kelly. You finished third here tonight. You were leading with just about 5 laps to go. What happened there that cost you the race lead and ultimately the victory?
Well, I just ran out of gas, I guess, literally and figuratively. I'm glad I had a little time to sit there and catch my breath. That was a heck of a race, I'll tell you. Good, clean racing by everybody, and a lot of fun. And it was frustrating to drop to third. I ran out of fuel there coming out of 4 for the last. That's why I fell to third from second. And as Carl was coming up to pass me, I knew I was close on gas all along, but I knew I was real close on gas about the time he rolled around me. So I was like, well, I'm kind of glad he's passing me, because if I run out of gas coming off of 4 for the win, I'm going to want to kill myself. So it was a good run. I'm just happy to get into a podium and get to talk to you guys for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was such a tiring race. I talked about it with Trevor, how long the green flag runs were. You said just a couple of seconds ago, figuratively and physically, you ran out of gas. It's extremely tiring to run a race that long under green flag. How do you prepare yourself mentally for a race like this, where we come to Michigan, we expect long green flag runs? How do you prepare for a race like that?
Well, for me, it's just experience. It's still a lot of stress, and I was sweating hard, and your brain's working. It's hard. The car's getting harder to drive, and it's getting loose, and you got to back up your entry, but then you got to do all that math in your head and figure out if you can push it hard or who's coming and who's going. So many strategies going on, and I just tried to set up, focus on my line and setting a pace. Luckily, the two runs were almost, the same amount of laps, so I just set out to try to run an exact same segment as I did the segment before. And, Dylan and I got battling there at the end and allowed those guys to catch up on us. They pitted a couple laps after me, so I figured they were good to go on gas and could push it a little harder. And Dylan ran me real clean and was being very nice. He probably could have forced his way by sooner, but I think he wore out his right rear too. So it was just great strategy race, really fun to run. Got to see who had the long run cars and how it all played out, and wish I could have won it, but I'll take it third.
Well, and a third place finish obviously gives you some pretty good points as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. We're just 10 races away after tonight, and you were already in a playoff position. You were sitting 12th coming into tonight, and you had a pretty comfortable cushion, over 60 points back to the cutoff spot. How do you approach the next 10 races as we look closer to the playoffs? You have a road course coming up, then you have a couple of short tracks coming up. Darlington is coming up. Of course, the Brickyard is in that mix as well. How do you approach the next stretch of races as we get to that point? And how do you maintain the gap that you have on the guys behind you?
Yeah, my main priority is going to be to just run, pretty much the same that I've ran this year. I missed a race because my computer blew up early in the season. So going off my average finish, I'd probably be about fourth in the standings. I went through this last year, went through the whole season, squeaked my way in, squeaked my way all the way through to the end of the, second to last round, and finally got a win to get myself into the final four. And I really don't want to have to go through that. So I've got some tracks I think I might be able to win at. So really, I just want to keep finishing races to maintain my position. But there's a few tracks here where I'm really going to be shooting for the win as hard as I can.
Well, we hope that you can get that job done. But before we let you go, Mike, just want to give you a chance to say thank you to your sponsors and say hello to any friends or family who makes it happen for you on the number 2 machine.
Yeah, definitely. Big shout out to Sarah Kelly and Sewell, personal injury attorneys, who are my sponsors for this season. They stepped on to support me for this season and all the other leagues that I run in. Really appreciate them helping out. And my team, Turn 1 Heroes, we're running second in the team standings. Those Aegis guys, tough to beat, get a lot of PR, and we hope to, our team's running really strong right now. I think we had a 3rd, a 6th, and a 7th tonight with David Comstock joining the team there. So like to thank those guys, and of course my lovely wife for allowing me to race on Monday nights. And appreciate you guys doing the work you do too. Broadcasts are great.
You absolutely cannot forget to thank the lovely wife. That is most important. Right. Well, congrats on your 3rd place finish tonight, Mike, and good luck next week at Sonoma.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the desert.
Absolutely. That was Mike Kelly. He came up just a couple of laps short of potentially a victory here tonight at Michigan. Still has a spot in the playoffs, though, and looks like he's going to be able to maintain that. But, James, what an awesome race we saw here tonight. Lots of green flag racing, a bunch of varying strategies, and when it was all said and done, we got another first-time winner on the season.
Another first-time winner in Carl Shedd, and from this very, very big track, we go to a very, very twisty track. We go road course racing for the first time this season next weekend when we head to Sonoma Raceway in Northern California. So that'll be a change of pace for a lot of these drivers and should be a lot of fun, too.
Absolutely, and it's an opportunity for drivers to potentially go in there and get their first victory on the season. Of course, last year we saw Scott Eckert, who is not running this season. He got the victory at Sonoma last year. Anthony DeBarro was the runner-up, so you see some faces that you might not necessarily see at the front. Greg Evans was another one that had a pretty good run. I don't think he's running this season either, but it's an opportunity for a driver that may not necessarily be the best speedway driver or short-track driver, but maybe knows how to get around the road courses. They can go out there and show everybody what they've got. And as far as I know, they don't run any cautions on the road courses, so it's going to be a very quick and fast-paced race. You're going to see 50 laps of green flag racing, which allows for some varying strategies and could essentially bring us another first-time winner.
We'll find out what happens next week when we wind our way out of the Irish Hills and into wine country for our race at Sonoma, which will be same time, same place, 9:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, right here on LSRTV. But we'll go ahead and wrap it up for this evening here at Michigan. So, for all of us here at LSRTV, for Brian Macklin, my colleague in the booth, for our talented, lovely, fantastic Cisco Scaramusa producing down below, for John Abbott and the admins at Real Sim Racing, and for Laura Lawson, DJ Lyon, and Evan Pasoko at LSRTV, I'm James Pike saying thank you for watching tonight's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking. And we will see you from Sonoma next week here on LSRTV.